Yo, what's good, guys? We are back at it again with another MLB The Show video for you guys, and today we're going to be time traveling, taking a look at what I think the best lineup to start Season 2 will be. Obviously, there's some caveats to this. We don't know entirely all the cards that are going to come out come the first day of Season 2. So I'm kind of taking a gamble here with some of these positions and saying this will be the best. It's not guaranteed, but we can take an educated guess and kind of figure that out. So I want to show you guys the best lineup day one of season 2, as well as the best cards to think of wild carding. I want to break that down because a lot of those wild cards will probably go up in value, at least immediately following the season's launch. They may go down in the future, but immediately when people realize these are the best wild cards, they'll probably go up. As speaking of that, live series are kind of already up. Showzone put out a thing yesterday saying live series is up 13% and kind of projected to rise more. So if you want some of these live series cards to kind of start next season off strong, you're probably gonna want to go grab them now. So real quick, right before we get into it, I would urge you guys to like and subscribe if this does help you. If you want to stay up to date with everything MLB The Show, this is the place to be. We're going to be doing it all year. So let's hop into it. So the lineup you see before you is the bare bones one. No wild cards, obviously. We have Babe in left, Trout in center, Acuna in right. First base is Palmeiro. Second base, I have Mondesi, but if you want to play Dansby there, I wouldn't be too mad at you. If you want to play Martin de Ego there, I wouldn't be too mad at you. If you have a shortstop you'd rather play and put Mookie at second, wouldn't be too mad at you. Speaking of shortstop, Mookie. Third base, Seager obviously won't be supercharged come the season, or maybe hits another home run and they extend the supercharge, but he'll only be like a 91, 92 at the most. So there's Seager. He's going to be very dominant. Again, Jordan at DH, and then Piazza at catcher. And then I have some other guys worth mentioning. Diego, great utility guy, plays a lot of good defense at a lot of different positions, has a great swing. Definitely usable as long as you're not on legend. Buck Leonard, you look at him and Richie Sexton. If you don't have Palmeiro, if you don't like Palmeiro, very good options at first base to start next season. Bernie, good little plug and play outfield guy, great switch hitter. Might be key to like the Santana team early in the season if you're going to run that again. And then Dansby, obviously very good at short, second, third. Good little contact bat there. So we'll run through the rotation. Not too much to mention. I don't think any pitchers are really worth wild carding. And obviously it's very dependent on what difficulty you're on. They could easily come out with another like Cliff Lee, Roy Halladay. That's the best pitcher in the game on legend, even though he's like a 90 overall. If that describes you, if you're on legend. If not, you know, if you're on all-star, you need speed differentials, you need outliers. So it's kind of dependent on what difficulty you're on. But for me, Pedro, Shohei, Nolan, Satchel, Corbin Burns. Wouldn't really think of too many other guys other than maybe like a Fergie Jenkins just for the speed differential, maybe a Garrett Cole, maybe a Zach Wheeler, maybe a DeGrom. Maybe you even bring back this like starter Sandy Alcantara. It's really up to you. Bullpen, I think, is a little more cemented. The only card I'm missing is Andrew Miller. I'm not going to go out of my way to get him because I feel relatively confident with the lefties I'm fielding, but Andrew Miller's going to be very good again. You got Matzik, Rogers, Sir Anthony, Bard, Felix, Mason Miller, new addition. This card's going to be a problem come day one of next season. Yohan Duran and Matt Strom. Other than that, other guys to mention, Jose Alvarado's not too bad. This Troy Percival's always slept on. This Mark Melancon you get from the USA Maps pretty slept on. Devin Williams, all right. Yimi Garcia, if he ever was not playing down, it seems like this guy's always playing down. Would be a good option. Lee Smith isn't too bad. This Gold Joe Nathan isn't too bad. Evan Phillips, not the worst. Clay Holmes, not the worst. And then if you just need a lefty, Hader's not too bad. Suarez is pretty decent. 5-pitch mix. Don't think, yeah, he doesn't have outlier on this card, but not a bad option. And then Camilo Duvall, obviously, pretty decent. So that's kind of all the live series cards I would think of. Let's get into the wild cards. I can kind of show you guys what I've been looking at. These are my wild cards kind of ranked. You can see we have our S tiers, our A tiers, our B tiers, our C tiers, and then our scumbag tiers, because there will be people that do this, especially with the ability of getting multiple wild cards next season. So I'm going to run you guys through kind of why you would want certain guys. So Adley and Posada kind of go without mention. If you are not comfortable with Mike Piazza and they don't really come out with like a Gary Sanchez-esque catcher at the start of next season, the value that you get out of a guy like Posada or Rutschman is going to be limitless. It's going to take probably the entire season for catchers to catch up to guys like Adley and Posada. Like 125s across the board, especially if you're somebody that plays on Legend, that Posada is going to be absolutely massive for you. And then obviously they're both switch hitters with fantastic swings. So it's going to be very hard if you can't use a guy like Piazza to get anywhere close to the value they'll provide you at catcher. So I think that automatically makes them some of the better wild cards you could possibly do. Other than that, I'll kind of start to fill some of these in, I guess. Why not? So for me, it'd be Posada, just because value-wise, he's like a fifth of Adley's price and is probably better on Legend, especially if you're not running the switch hitting boost. So I'm a big fan of Posada there. First base, nobody to really mention. Other than that, in S tier, right? Kind of, we'll try to keep on track here. Other than that, I think defensive value guys kind of have something to say about it. At shortstop, a guy like Rollins obviously has to be mentioned. A lot of people have this card. His contacts are in a very good spot. His power will be, it's a little low at this current point in time, but come, the first day of season 2, his power is going to be in a very, very good spot. So I'm going to enjoy Rollins, and the defense is good. It's not great because he's ultimately very short. So obviously he doesn't get the super dives like a guy like Ellie gets, but he still plays a very good shortstop, and that arm strength is crazy. I've thrown out a ton of would-be infield singles with his arm strength. So I think Rollins is definitely worth mentioning as a wild card. And if those are your two, then you're covered. You're good to go. Other than that, I think a guy like Trevor Story at shortstop gives you more of those super dives, will probably be a better defender than a guy like Rollins. The downside is he's not quite a switch hitter. The upside is he has more power and will mash against lefties. If the meta next season is again dominant lefty starting pitchers, then look for a guy like Trevor Story to be very, very popular as a wild card. Has one of the better righty swings in the game. So I do like Story. Other than that, we have Nico Goodrum. This card has had insane longevity, and I think he's going to keep having that longevity. Basically, he is the closest thing we have in the game right now to a Ellie De La Cruz that's playable. You see his stats right here. The problem with him right now in this season, the only reason he's not definitively S tier in every best lineup in the game is the clutch and the contact aren't in the best spot for him. When you wipe the slate clean and the highest contacts you're seeing across the board is 100, him having 94 is not going to be an issue at all, especially with the fact that he's giving you elite shortstop defense. And then kind of harping on that, he can also give you elite defense anywhere else you want. You don't like having Ronald Acuna in right? Bang, Nico Goodrum. You don't like having Trout in center field? Bang, Nico Goodrum. So he's the ultimate utility guy, brings you elite center field defense, elite shortstop defense, two things that are going to be relatively hard to find at the start of next season. So for that reason, I think he is an excellent selection for a wildcard slot. Then we're moving on to our A tier guys. I think all of these guys are fairly good to wildcard. I think if you're wildcarding them, I'm not side-eyeing you. I kind of see the reason why you would wildcard any of these. Willie Mays, obviously, probably the best defensive center fielder in the game. It's going to be hard for any center fielder to have better fielding stats than him until we get a Mickey Mantle. And even then, you can argue Mickey's kind of short, so he might olay some balls in the outfield. You don't have to worry about that with Willie Mays. The problem is the swing. If you can make his swing work, he's easily probably an S tier option for you. But for most people, he's going to have really uncomfortable at-bats, righty-righty. Mason Miller next season is probably going to eat him alive. So that, I think, kind of knocks him down into this A tier. Other than that, Larry Walker, again, another card, could easily be S tier. If everybody next season is pitching 5 righty starting pitchers in the rotation, that easily makes Larry Walker an S tier card, right? Because he's going to hit 500 against righties. The problem is the lefties. If Larry Walker's hardest at bat next season is Tyler Matzik once a game, then yeah, he's probably S tier and you probably should wildcard him, especially with the defense that he can give you in a corner spot. When you look at the team right now and a guy like Mike Trout or Ronald Acuna is playing right field, Larry Walker is a huge upgrade over them. Other than that, you have like Byron Buxton here, basically the same as Willie Mays, kind of lacks a little bit of that contact, but arguably his swing's better. The problem is he doesn't quite give you the same amount of defense that Willie does. Willie is very fast and has amazing reaction. Byron's very fast, doesn't have the greatest reaction. Has like 80, might get a bad jump on a ball every once in a while. That might cost him. But overall, very good. Basically a culmination of that captain card where his contacts are kind of low. But at the start of next season, that's not really going to matter. Chris Bryant, I'm looking at this card more so as like a right fielder, left fielder. I think he's an absolute top tier option there. His swing is insanely good. His contacts are insanely good. His power is great. He's a gold fielder with a good arm, good reaction. There's a ton to love about Chris Bryant. I didn't even mention Cattell. I was so locked in on Nico Goodrum, I didn't even mention Cattell. So real quick, we go back. Content creator. But all I gotta do is just show you what his wheel looks like in a secondary position in right field. You'll understand easily. Look at him. Insane reaction, very good speed, kind of a tall player. Will get a diamond shield, I believe, if you superfractor him. And absolutely mash his lefties. Not bad against righties either, and is a switch hitter. So I think Cattell's S tier without a doubt. I think he is probably a lock for me. He's probably definitely one of my wild cards. And then we'll kind of move accordingly through some of these other guys. Eduardo Escobar, right? If you need a second baseman, or if, I guess the best way to go about it would be play him at third and put Corey Seager at second base. You're not going to find a better one. You might not find a better second baseman all of next season than Eduardo Escobar. You might not find a better third baseman. I would like to think Jose Ramirez will probably get a pretty good card kind of soon. So he could threaten for that title, but short of a 99 Jose Ramirez, 98 Jose Ramirez, I don't really see you getting a better card than this Eduardo Escobar to play third or second base. So I think he is very, very, very good and still a top tier option. I just think you kind of need that outfield defense to be really valuable as a wild card at this moment. Other than that, Aaron Judge, again, like I said, not the greatest outfield defender. He's not quite the liability that the live series Judge is, and he's a whole lot better of a hitter than the live series Judge. So if you absolutely rake with this card, I would not blame you at all for wild carding him. I think he's an absolute stud. Other than that, we have Carlos Santana. He's here because of his swing. I have, struggled on Legend last season. He was my best hitter, hit 500 on Legend. Some of that is the auto shift. A lot of people play auto shift on him, so you get some late doubles down the line. But that's part of the card and should be factored in. So he's an absolute stud. His swing is insane. All he does is hit perfect nukes for the most part. Absolute stud, and you will get to be able to use him as your captain next season. So depending on how many other viable switch hitters we get, if you wildcard Nico Goodrum and Carlos Santana and have Bernie Williams and Mondesi, and we get a couple of other halfway decent switch hitters next season, the switch hitting team could be back from day one. In reality, it'll probably take around till mid-season for the Santana team to kind of pick up again. But there exists a universe, a world where, we get a lot of other halfway decent switch hitters next season. And this Santana team is popping off rip again. So other than that, we have Mookie Betts. He's only here because I think a lot of people have the live series. And so there's not quite as much value. If we pull this up real quick, kind of go over that for you guys. So we go shortstop here, core, Mookie, and Uncore now. And compare him with the Lightning Mookie. Obviously, the Lightning Mookie's a better card. Nobody sitting here saying the live series is better. They have the exact same quirks. And you can see the only stat the other one has higher is blocking. That's because I am superfractored. But look how similar they are, right? You're looking at, 11 less contact right, 10 less contact left, 20-ish power right, 10-ish power left, a little bit of vision, a little bit of speed, a little bit of fielding. They're very similar cards. If you've super factored the Live Series one, they are very similar. So I just don't think it's entirely worth the value. I think this Live Series Mookie is just as good and has every reason to just be in a starting lineup instead of using one of your wildcard slots on this Lightning Mookie. But obviously, that's a unique situation. Mookie's like 100 something K now. He's one of the better Live Series. His price is going up and up every day. So I get that not everybody has had the chance to get this Mookie. Not everybody has super factored this Mookie. But I promise you, he is every bit 80, 90% of what the Lightning Mookie will be for most people, especially with the seasons resetting. This Live Series Mookie also has one of the highest clutches in the game. So I think he has a lot of value in that regard. So I just don't think the Lightning one is quite as valuable to wildcard, assuming you have the Live Series. If you don't have the Live Series, this card's probably easily S tier. But assuming you have the Live Series, I'd probably stay away from wildcarding him. Other than that, George Brett should be fine. Again, if we're kind of in a meta where there's a lot of dominant lefty starting pitchers, George Brett might even be B tier. But if we get into like the Larry Walker meta I was talking about earlier, where there's a lot of righty starters that are pretty good, that makes up most of people's rotations, then, you know, George Brett's probably easily S tier. He has an incredible swing. It's not even that bad hitting lefty-lefty with him. Very quick through the zone swing, and obviously has a lot of good hitting quirks, so he kind of demolishes the ball anyway. He could very easily end up being S tier. It just kind of depends on how the season pans out. Other than that, we got Jurickson Profar. Again, what have I not said about this card? One of my favorite swings in the game, and he's a switch hitter. Absolute stud, and he's not terrible. Like, when you compare his defense to other outfielders right now, it's pretty bad. When you compare him to where people are going to be at the start of next season, he is going to be a god in left field. He's going to go crazy. He's going to look like a platinum glover in comparison to the guys a lot of us are going to be running. Other than that, B tier. So Rengifo, I think if you already like this card, he's going to be very good. The problem is kind of the defense. He sucks defensively, but you know, that's where it's very nice that he's like a super utility guy, and you can kind of hide him at second, you can hide him at third, you can hide him in left field. He doesn't have to play shortstop for you. So I like that. Marcelo Mayer, again, kind of depends on the meta, right? If there's a bunch of righty starting pitchers, this guy is going to mash. He is left-handed Cal Ripken, left-handed kind of Trevor Story, without some of the speed. So he's going to be very good. It just kind of depends on what the meta looks like, and obviously it's hard to compete with these shortstops that are in S tier. Colson Montgomery, I just kind of threw him in here because you can very easily get like a little nostalgia blast from last season with the spring training one. I know a lot of people that use that card for a lot longer than they probably should have. You can kind of get some of those flashback vibes from this one if you do want to use that wildcard spot. Can't complain about a 6'4" shortstop that can fall on a lot of stuff that has a very good swing. So again, just kind of depends on the meta. Brian Roberts, I think the power holds him back. If you want to kind of argue that Rollins case where you could play him in center field and he probably wouldn't be the worst defensive center fielder, especially when you compare him to where we're going to be at next season, you definitely could. But the fact that his power is low right now and will probably be mediocre at the start of season 2 is kind of a red flag for me. But if you do really enjoy his swing, obviously he has some nice quirks also, so he kind of plays higher power-wise than what his card says. I've just personally flown out with this card too many times. And I think wildcarding a second baseman probably isn't a great idea. If you want to play him at short or play him in center field, I think there's a lot more value in that. But obviously that's not for everybody. This Gunner card, again, kind of Larry Walker syndrome, and his stats just aren't that crazy. I would rather have some of these other shortstops. I would rather probably wildcard Marcelo or Colson than Gunner, personally. But that's just me. Max Clark kind of gives you some of that Byron Buxton-esque defense in center field. The problem is he's a lefty, doesn't really hit for great power. I'd rather wildcard Buxton 10 out of 10 times than this card. Matt Carpenter, Babe Ruth, budget Babe Ruth right here. He can play first base for you. I don't think first base is a great spot to wildcard. But if you're missing a power lefty bat like Babe Ruth, like somebody like that, Matt Carpenter can definitely fill in for you there. Ian Happ, this card's still really good. I've super factored him, so for me, his stats look a little better. But if you play this card at second base, it's going to take a good amount of the next season for us to get a second baseman as good as him. You guys are kind of, forgetting about how good that card is. I mean, look at him. He is 98, 113, 95, 120, 82. It's going to take a good chunk of change into next season before we get a second baseman anywhere close to this, especially when you take into account that he's a switch hitter. So if you're running the Santana boost with him, he gets even better. And honestly, the fact that he's tall makes him play a very serviceable second base. He's made some very good plays for me personally there throughout the year. Other than that, we have Brad Miller, basically the exact same card as Matt Carpenter. Wherever Carpenter goes, Miller has to follow. They are very similar cards. One's free, one's a little more expensive. I don't think either of them really have quirks, so they are very similar. C tier, this is kind of budget. If you're balling on a budget, if you're a little behind the curve, some of these guys are probably worth wildcarding, but not super great. So like Windseal, right? Most people probably got this card for free out of the season awards program. They probably picked the pack that he's in. So I like him a lot. If you just need a switch hitter with a very solid swing, yeah, his defense sucks. It already sucks. So playing him out of position probably isn't great. But you could definitely do Windseal. Not going to be the card he is right now, because unless you're going to wildcard Santana and put a bunch of probably subpar switch hitters in your lineup next season, probably not going to be too great. Cody Bellinger. A lot of people are still running this card. If you are somebody that still runs this card, he is going to be a god come next season. Yeah, there's probably better options because you can always wildcard a switch hitter and stuff. But this card's going to be insane come next season when kind of pitching is at a lower point and when he's going to get to see more righties, hopefully. He should be a stud. Bobby Witt. If this card had came out earlier last season, he would have been a demon. The problem is he came out right before like 97 overall started coming out, so he looked kind of poo-poo. Now he's absolutely a monster. When you compare him to like 90 overall cards, 87 overall cards, he's an absolute monster. And a very good card. So if you enjoyed Bobby Witt, I think he's going to be usable again. Chirrillo, I'd probably stay away from. He's really just here for the outfield defense. I think his swing sucks. I think it's arguably worse this year than it has been in previous years, and I kind of liked it last year. So I'm not a huge fan. Also, he can't play like shortstop or any infield positions. That's kind of a knock on him. Hank Thompson's kind of just here as an honorable mention. I don't think his swing's too bad. He has a lot of good quirks, but he is kind of overpriced. If we had to lock in wild cards, if you had to tell me at the start of the season, you have to pick this wild card and you can't change it, he'd probably be up there because he can play a ton of positions very well. But that's not the reality of wild cards, so I don't think he's really too worth it. Brooks Lee, I think if you're on a budget, this card was like 10, 12K. Now he's like 19, 20. He's kind of on the rise. Very serviceable card. Basically Ian Happ, but even cheaper. You're trading a little bit of power for more contact. So I don't think he's bad. Has a good player model. Is not a bad shortstop. Is not a bad second baseman. So I think he's very good and worth mentioning. And then Nolan Jones. This is the most underrated card probably of the year. He'll probably go down as the most underrated. I don't think I ever saw anybody use this card in ranked. I used them at one event. 110, 113. 90, 91, amazing defense, good clutch, and an awesome swing with insane hitting quirks. So look out for this guy to get a finest card later in the year, because this is probably the best one we'll probably be getting. And then we have Scumbag tier. I would urge you not to do this, but there's going to be people that do this, and it's not a bad strategy. If you can go out there and have a much higher chance of winning than losing 2 out of 5 of your ranked games, I'm not going to say I'm completely against it. It's not a bad strategy. But yeah, guys, I think that is kind of the wild cards I'd be looking at. The lineups I would be thinking of running. I think there's a lot of very good cards at every position to think of wild carding. Really, it's just a matter of which ones you have, right? Not everybody has every single card in the game. And I don't have every single card. I wish I had Trevor Story. I don't really want to go out of my way to buy him. But I do want to just kind of quickly go over, mention some of these cards, who you should be thinking of wild carding, and stuff like that. So, till next time.